So there I was, wind completely knocked out of me, when I lifted my arm and saw the entire 7-inch grinder disc inside my sleeve. That's when I realized this could be bad, and I was alone. Thanks to SimpliSafe for sponsoring this episode. Hello my friends. First of all, I want you to know that I'm okay. The accident happened a couple weeks ago now. I've had some time to heal and I'm doing just fine. What happened was bad enough, but it could have been a whole lot worse, and I'm just thankful that it wasn't. Secondly, although I will be showing what happened, I won't be showing the actual wound or injury, so you don't need to worry about that. This is a family channel and I want to keep it that way. But I figured I would show what happened and the mistake I made leading up to it, in hopes that this information will spare others making the same mistake in the future. So here's what happened. I was sanding the interior logs with a heavy grinder, and I had just moved into the corner. Normally, this is where I would switch to the small grinder, since it was easier to handle in case I caught an edge. But this time, against my better judgment, I didn't make the switch. Sure enough, I caught an edge. I accidentally bumped the disc against a perpendicular log, and before I knew it, the grinder had ripped itself from my hands and kicked me square in the stomach. From there, the disc spun itself up into my arm and tore straight into my sleeve. Thankfully, the fabric from my hoodie jammed the grinder, and I was able to turn it off. Other than feeling like I had been kicked by a mule, I didn't feel any pain in my arm, so I was hoping that I'd escaped injury. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. The grinder operates at 8,000 RPM, which means that the disc rotates at an astounding 133 times per second. So although its contact with my arm was brief, it still managed to do a fair amount of damage. Anyway, I stumbled off to the tool shed, which is where I keep the first aid kit. After seeing my arm, my overall feeling was just disappointment. I was disappointed in myself for not being more careful, for not giving the grinder the respect that it requires. And that's the thing about power tools, is if you don't respect them, they're not going to respect you. And that's what happened with me, which is why I was so frustrated with myself, because I knew better. But again, I'm thankful that it wasn't any worse than what it was. I mean, it was bad enough, but it could have been a whole lot worse. I'm thankful my sweater stopped the grinder from spinning, and I'm thankful that the wheel didn't spin up into my neck. But the main reason why I was so frustrated with myself is I am my family's sole provider. I've got a wife and daughter that need me to come home to them at the end of the day, and I need to come home to them. So I wouldn't be the only person who would suffer the consequences of an injury or my own stupidity. My wife and daughter indirectly would as well, and that's what got me. I scrubbed the wound with soap and water, sterilized it with alcohol, applied some salve, and wrapped it with gauze. After that, I threw on a jacket and went back to work. Although from then on, I stuck with a small grinder for the detail work, and I was a lot more careful to avoid clipping the edge. When I got home that night, it was clear my injury needed further treatment, but I'll spare you the details. The good news is that I'm on the mend, and a little wiser for the wear. At first, I wasn't going to show my run-in with the grinder. In fact, I left it out of my previous episode, which is when it happened. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that maybe I should show my mistake, in hopes that it might help others to avoid making the same one. I'd like to thank SimpliSafe for sponsoring this episode. SimpliSafe is effective and easy to use home security that enables you to design the best system for your space and ships it directly to your doorstep. They've got sensors to cover every window, room, and door. Plus lots of great extras like water sensors, smoke detectors, HD cameras, and doorbell cameras. From there, your home is professionally monitored 24/7. They've also launched a new wireless outdoor security camera with an ultra-wide view, 8x zoom, built-in spotlight, color night vision, and two-way audio. I found the setup to be surprisingly straightforward, and adding the outdoor camera to my system was just as easy. I've been using SimpliSafe for a couple years now, and I've appreciated the peace of mind that it offers my family. Everything from the smoke detector to the cameras and entry sensors are all linked to the system, so I can check on things even while I'm away from home. The great news is that SimpliSafe's interactive monitoring service begins at only 50 cents a day. Plus, the SimpliSafe's team of professionals are easily reachable and always keep the lines of communication open. Visit simplisafe.com/theoutsider to learn more and get 30% off your SimpliSafe security system. Anyway, my dad and I returned the next day to finish the sanding. I used the heavy grinder for the straight shots, while my dad used the small grinder for the detailing. The storm passed overhead while we continued to work, safe and dry underneath the shelter of our own making. After spending years working in the bush in all kinds of weather, it felt good to work a day in the rain without getting wet. Until this point, we'd been storing extra building materials in the loft, but now they had to go.
We got lots there for the show. Take a turn.
With the cabin cleaned up and the building materials stowed safely underneath, we headed back inside to begin insulating. Originally, I was considering using a spray foam kit for the cabin, but I ultimately decided to go with rock wool instead. Although the spray foam would have provided a superior seal against air infiltration, I just don't think it would have been the safest option in the long run, considering its chemical composition. Rock wool, on the other hand, is chemical free, plus it's fire resistant and moisture resistant, and maintains its R value over time. Fiberglass insulation has similar properties and benefits to rock wool, but not nearly to the same degree. So rock wool is the clear winner in my books. While my dad continued with the insulation, I followed in behind with the lath work. Well, at this point, we have the entire cabin insulated between the courses with rock wool, and we have half the cabin complete with the lath work. Now, with the lath, it's quite tedious. It takes a long time to do, but when you do it right, it pays for itself. It's much easier to install the mortar chinking after that. So you want to make sure that we do a good job. Which brings me to a question that I've received a lot of in my previous episode when we showed our lath installation on the outside. A lot of people ask me why we don't use an air stapler or an air nailer to install the mesh as opposed to doing it by hand with a hammer. And the reason for that is as we're putting the nails in by hand, we're able to bend the nails and tighten the mesh as needed. And once the top course of nails is in, we can put the roofing nails in the bottom, which further tightens up the courses of lath. And that's something you just couldn't achieve with air tools because you can't control the nail as it goes in. So that's why we do the much slower, but I think better process of putting in nails by hand with a hammer.
We're so close to having the cabin ready for Christmas, but our window of opportunity is rapidly closing. If we can't chink the inside before the cold weather comes, we won't be able to until later next spring. And for us, that isn't an option. Until next time, my friends, stay safe, be well, and God bless.